Twice a year, the world stops. It does not matter if you are in Tokyo, New York, Rio de Janeiro, or London. For 90 minutes, the planet is divided into two colors, white and blaugrana. They call it El Clásico. But to call it a football match is a misunderstanding of history. It is not just a game. It is a collision of identities. It is a war of ideologies played out on a patch of grass. It is the centralism of Madrid against the independence of Catalonia, the establishment against the rebellion, the crown against the army. To understand Real Madrid, you must understand the enemy. You must understand FC Barcelona. Because the greatness of Real Madrid is not measured only by trophies, but by the size of the monster they have to defeat to win them. In other rivalries, clubs fight for a city. In El Clásico, they fight for the soul of a nation. This is the story of the greatest rivalry in the history of sports. A story of politics, dictatorship, stolen legends, severed pig heads, and a mutual obsession that has defined European football for a century. The roots of this hatred go deeper than football. They are buried in the soil of Spain. Since the inception of the clubs in roughly the same era, Barcelona in 1899, Madrid in 1902, they represented opposing forces. Madrid was the capital, the seat of the monarchy, the bureaucratic heart of Castile. Barcelona was the industrial powerhouse, the port city, the heart of Catalan culture with its own language and identity. In the early years, the rivalry was heated but sporting. But in the 1930s, the Spanish Civil War turned the heat into fire. When the war ended and General Francisco Franco seized power, he sought to centralize Spain. He banned regional languages and flags. Catalonia was suppressed. In this climate of fear, the football stadium, Les Corts, and later the Camp Nou, became the only place where Catalans could speak their language and wave their colors without being arrested. Barcelona became més que un club, more than a club. It became an unarmed army. And in their eyes, Real Madrid became the regime team, the team of the government, the ambassadors of Franco. This is the great myth of the rivalry. The truth is far more complex. Real Madrid also suffered during the war. Their president was exiled, their stadium ruined. But myths are powerful. And in 1943, the myth became a scar that would never heal. It was the semi-final of the Copa del Generalissimo. Barcelona had won the first leg 3-0 at home. They felt confident. But in the second leg in Madrid, something strange happened. The atmosphere was terrifying. Legend says the police visited the Barcelona dressing room before the match, reminding them of the generosity of the regime in letting them play. Fear paralyzed the visitors. Real Madrid won the match, 11-1. To Madridistas, it was a glorious remontada. To Barcelona, it was a humiliation orchestrated by the state. That scoreline, 11-1, is still the open wound where the modern hatred was born. But if politics lit the fire, one man poured gasoline on it, Alfredo Di Stefano. We have spoken of him as the man who changed Real Madrid. But we must remember, he was supposed to be a Barcelona player. In 1953, Barcelona had negotiated with River Plate. Di Stefano even played a friendly match in a Barcelona shirt. But Real Madrid, led by the cunning Santiago Bernabéu, negotiated with the Colombian club Millonarios, who famously owned the players' rights during a strike. The Spanish Federation, in a chaotic ruling, suggested Di Stefano play alternate seasons for each club. Barcelona refused in disgust. Madrid paid the full fee and took the player. The rest is history. With the man Barcelona lost, Real Madrid won the first 5 European Cups. Barcelona had to watch from the shadows as their bitter rivals conquered the world with the player who was meant to be their idol. This theft created a complex in Catalonia, a feeling of victimhood. While Madrid projected arrogance and winning, Barcelona projected moral superiority and suffering. Real Madrid was the bad guy who won. Barcelona was the good guy who lost. The rivalry evolved through the decades. In the 1970s, Johan Cruyff arrived in Barcelona. He famously said he chose Barca over Madrid because he could never play for a club associated with Franco. Cruyff changed the philosophy. He gave Barcelona a winning identity on the pitch, creating a style that would eventually rival Madrid's power. But even then, the psychological dominance remained in the capital. The Quinta del Buitre in the 80s dominated the league. The message from the Bernabéu was always clear. We are the natural rulers of Spain. You are the eternal challengers. But the modern era brought a new level of toxicity. And it started with one name, Luis Figo. We touched on this in the Galactico story, but we must revisit it through the lens of the rivalry. Figo was not just a player for Barcelona. He was their captain. He was the symbol of their resistance against Madrid. When Florentino Perez triggered his release clause in 2000, it wasn't just a transfer, it was a violation. It confirmed Barcelona's worst fear, that no matter how good they were, Real Madrid could simply buy their soul. When Figo returned to the Camp Nou in white, the noise was recorded as reaching the decibel level of a jet engine taking off. The hatred was visceral. It was dangerous. The image of the severed pig's head thrown onto the pitch remains the defining symbol of the modern rivalry. It showed the world that this was not entertainment. It was personal. It was tribal. Real Madrid embraced the role of the villain in the eyes of Catalonia, wearing the hatred like a badge of honor. However, the dynamic shifted in 2008. Pep Guardiola took over Barcelona and created arguably the greatest team in football history. Messi, Xavi, Iniesta. For the first time, Madrid looked inferior. The 6-2 defeat at the Bernabéu and the 5-0 defeat at the Camp Nou were humiliations that shook the foundations of the White House. Real Madrid needed a response. They needed an anti-hero to stop the perfect Barcelona. Enter José Mourinho. If Guardiola was the poet, Mourinho was the general. In 2010, Florentino Perez hired Mourinho with a single specific mission: stop Barcelona, destroy their hegemony, at any cost. What followed was a 3-year civil war. The matches between 2010 and 2013 were the most intense, violent, and technically high-level games ever played. It was Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi, the machine versus the alien. Mourinho turned up the temperature. He weaponized the press conferences. He insinuated that UEFA favored Barcelona. He created a siege mentality. The world is against us. On the pitch, it was brutal. Sergio Ramos and Pepe were sent out to intimidate. Every tackle was a declaration of war. Every goal was a scream of defiance. The tension was so high that it nearly destroyed the Spanish national team, forcing Iker Casillas and Xavi Hernandez to intervene to prevent a complete breakdown between the players. But Mourinho's strategy worked. In 2011, Cristiano Ronaldo's header in the Copa del Rey final broke Barcelona's psychological grip. In 2012, Real Madrid won La Liga of Records with 100 points, finally ending Guardiola's dominance. It proved that even against the greatest version of their rival, Real Madrid could find a way to win. This rivalry has shaped the modern identity of both clubs. They are defined by their opposites. Barcelona prides itself on La Masia, the academy, the homegrown heroes, the specific style of play. Real Madrid prides itself on the Bernabéu, the winning mentality, the global stars, the ability to win without a specific style, simply by sheer will. One values the process, the other values the outcome. One wants to be loved, the other wants to be feared. And yet, they need each other. Without Barcelona, Real Madrid would have no one to push them to the limits of financial and sporting excellence. Without Real Madrid, Barcelona would have no villain to define their narrative of resistance. They are Batman and the Joker, two superpowers locked in an eternal dance. When Real Madrid wins the Champions League, it hurts Barcelona more than losing a final themselves. When Barcelona wins a treble, it sends shockwaves of panic through the offices of the Bernabéu. The standard for a good season in Madrid is not just winning, it is winning more than them. Today, the rivalry continues. New names have entered the arena. Vinicius Jr., Bellingham, Mbappe against Yamal, Pedri, Gavi. But the ghosts are always there. When the white shirts walk onto the pitch against the blue and red, they carry the weight of 1943. They carry the shadow of Di Stefano. They carry the noise of the Figo transfer. They carry the scars of the Mourinho wars. El Clásico is the engine of world football. It generates the money, the attention, and the narratives that keep the sport alive globally. But for the fans, it is simpler than that. It is about hierarchy. It is about looking at your neighbor and saying, "We are the kings." Real Madrid has faced many rivals in Europe: Bayern, Milan, Liverpool, but those are sporting rivalries. Barcelona is existential. To be Real Madrid is to stand as the guardian of a winning tradition against a rival that wants to tear it down. And history shows one thing clearly: the greater the rival, the greater the glory in defeating them. Real Madrid is the greatest club in history, not in spite of Barcelona, but because of them. The war will never end. And in truth, neither side wants it to.
Madrid Unfiltered.